Exhausted men make fragile decisions, not because they are weak, but because they are empty. When a man is constantly tired, his judgment narrows. Small problems feel heavier than they are. Minor conflicts turn into unnecessary battles, and decisions that require patience get rushed. Rest is not laziness. Rest is maintenance. A man who never truly recovers begins to lead from depletion instead of clarity. He reacts instead of choosing. He survives the day instead of directing it. Over time, exhaustion changes more than energy levels. It quietly reshapes character. The exhausted man becomes shorter with words, less tolerant of mistakes, more impulsive with money, health, and relationships. He may still be present, but he's not grounded. He's there, but not fully available. Leadership requires margin, mental space, emotional steadiness, physical recovery. Without these, authority turns brittle, decisions lose depth, and responsibility becomes heavier than it needs to be. This is why real leadership starts long before meetings, plans, or discipline routines. It starts with recovery, not escape, not indulgence, but deliberate, structured rest that restores judgment. A man who cannot rest properly will struggle to lead properly, not because he lacks strength, but because he is running on what is already gone. Most men were taught that rest is a reward, something you earn only after everything is done. But leadership does not work that way. Rest is not the opposite of discipline, it is part of it. A disciplined man understands that his body, mind, and judgment are tools. And tools that are never maintained eventually fail, often at the worst possible moment. A man who rests properly does not lose edge. He gains precision. He listens more carefully. He speaks less but with more intention. He can pause before reacting. And that pause is where good leadership lives. Fatigue removes that pause. When rest is missing, decisions become emotional. Tone becomes sharper than necessary. Problems feel personal instead of solvable. This is why exhausted leaders often confuse control with strength. They push harder, talk louder, demand more, because they are compensating for what they lack internally. True leadership does not come from pressure, it comes from stability. Rest creates that stability. It restores perspective. It widens patience. It allows a man to see beyond the immediate moment. This is not about sleeping more hours for comfort. It is about recovering enough to think clearly. A rested man can carry responsibility without resentment. He can correct without humiliating. He can lead without draining everyone around him. That is skill. And like any skill, it must be trained deliberately. Chronic fatigue does not arrive loudly. It settles in quietly. It shows up as impatience that feels justified, as shortcuts that seem reasonable, as decisions made faster than they should be. A tired man still thinks he is thinking clearly. That is the danger. Fatigue narrows perception. It reduces the ability to hold multiple perspectives at once. Complex problems start to look like simple threats, and simple threats trigger defensive behavior. This is when judgment weakens. The exhausted mind favors relief over wisdom. It chooses what ends discomfort quickly, not what builds long-term stability. This is why fatigue often leads to poor financial decisions, unnecessary spending, avoiding uncomfortable conversations, postponing health signals that should be addressed. The man is not careless. He is depleted. A chronic fatigue also distorts emotional judgment. Small mistakes feel disrespectful. Questions feel like challenges. Silence feels like pressure. The man reacts not to reality, but to how heavy everything feels inside him. Over time, This erodes trust. Family members feel the tension before they understand it. Colleagues sense unpredictability. Leadership becomes inconsistent, not because the man lacks values, but because fatigue is quietly overruling them. This is why rest is not optional for judgment. It is foundational. Clear decisions require a nervous system that is not constantly overwhelmed. They require recovery that allows the mind to slow down. Without that, leadership turns reactive. And reactive leadership always costs more than it appears. A man can lead without recovery for a while. Many do. They push through weeks, then months, sometimes years. On the surface, things still function. Responsibilities are met, roles are maintained. But underneath, the cost accumulates. Leading without recovery slowly drains emotional reserves. Patience thins. Compassion becomes effortful. Presence turns mechanical. The man is doing what must be done, but not from a place of strength. This kind of leadership often looks strict, yet feels unstable. Rules replace relationships. Control replaces trust. And pressure replaces clarity. Over time, people around him adjust. They speak less. They share less. They avoid adding one more thing. Not out of respect, but out of caution. At home, this cost is felt even more quietly. Children sense when attention is partial. A partner notices when conversations shorten. Warmth fades before conflict ever appears. The man does not mean to withdraw. He is simply exhausted. But exhaustion does not excuse the impact. Leadership without recovery teaches others to shrink, to lower expectations, to carry their own weight in silence. And that is not strength. That is erosion. Recovery is what allows leadership to remain human. It keeps firmness from becoming cold. It keeps authority from becoming fear. Without recovery, a man may still lead, but he leads alone. And eventually, he leads tired people who feel alone too. Proper rest is often misunderstood. It is not collapse. It is not distraction. And it is not avoidance. Real rest is structured recovery. For a man, this means creating spaces where the nervous system can settle, where the mind is not constantly reacting, where attention is allowed to return to neutral. Sleep is the foundation, but it is not enough on its own. Proper rest also includes silence, time without input, moments without decision-making. A man who is always consuming news, messages, problems, never truly recovers. Movement matters too. Not intense effort, but steady grounding movement that reconnects the body and breath. Walking, stretching, slow physical routines that signal safety instead of urgency. Proper rest also requires boundaries. Saying no to unnecessary demands. And ending the day before exhaustion makes the choice for you. Protecting recovery time as deliberately as work time. This is not indulgence, it is responsibility. A man who schedules rest is not stepping back from leadership, he is reinforcing it. Because recovery restores judgment. It softens reactivity. And it rebuilds the margin needed to lead with steadiness. Proper rest does not make a man passive. It makes him precise. And precision is what leadership quietly depends on. Leadership does not begin with effort. It begins with recovery. A man does not lead well because he pushes harder. He leads well because he knows when to restore himself. Recovery is not weakness. It is awareness. It is the decision to protect clarity before it is lost. To preserve steadiness before pressure erodes it. To care for judgment before mistakes force the lesson. A rested man carries authority differently. He does not rush to prove. He does not react to every disturbance. He does not confuse urgency with importance. He moves slower, and that slowness gives weight to his decisions. Leadership built on recovery feels calm to others, predictable, safe. People do not have to brace themselves around him. They do not have to guess his mood. They do not have to compensate for his exhaustion. That calm is not accidental. It is maintained. A man who rests properly is choosing long-term leadership over short-term endurance. He is choosing consistency over burnout, presence over performance, and that choice shows up everywhere, in how he listens, in how he responds, in how he leads when no one is watching. Because leadership does not fail loudly, it fades quietly, when recovery is ignored. And leadership does not strengthen dramatically, it stabilizes, when recovery becomes part of discipline.